Good afternoon. Welcome, folks, to the first December edition, at least December 2025 edition of our Coaches Connect call. I'm Coach Jeremy, and we have a solid coaching crew here with us today, ready to dive into some conversations. And first up, before we hit record, Laura, who joined us 2 weeks ago and had or stimulated a lot of great discussion, we'll say. Uh, you had an update on the client that we discussed at length last week. Do you want to give us some updates?
Sure, and I don't know if anyone on this call was part of that discussion, but a quick overview was I had a client who came to me and really wanted to get back to where she was a couple years ago with changing her eating habits. She wanted to make sure she got back to the gym. She had thought that she didn't have enough capacity or time. She's got two kids, and she really wanted to not necessarily lose weight, but get tone. And really, her goal was longevity and to set a great example for her kids. And she ended up wanting to focus on time management. So 2 weeks ago, we talked a lot about, how do you really get and what tools can you use from PN Nutrition to help that or not? And how do we change her mind shift from I have to do a workout that's 90 minutes, and I have to make sure I go to the gym when she has a gym right inside her home. So fast forward ahead, when I ended up sending her the planning worksheet because I thought it would be good for her to put pen to paper on the reality of her life and not necessarily in the window of 9 to 5 or whatever her work hours is, but I wanted to know when she left that office, what was she doing every 30
Her
minutes?
5 to 9.
Right, from 5 to 11, whenever she went to bed, and then when she woke up in the morning, with kids and without kids. So the reality is, first of all, when she came back to me after having, our lengthy discussion, she basically already started with behavioral change without asking her to take any actions, which was really cool. So she went to bed one night 20 minutes earlier and she realized, wow, that worked. She moved her body, utilized the treadmill at home, made her kids part of it for one time. She packed her lunch one day because she was eating out every day and she knew that wasn't good because so she began a daily eating pattern change already because she was already doing overnight oats every night. So she said, "Oh, I said, why don't you just habit stack, right? Put something on top of it." So she did the lunch. And then she cleaned and reorganized her whole basement. She's like, listen, if I'm going to get back to the treadmill and using my in-home gym, it was a mess down there. I basically involved my kids and we power cleaned. So I think we all know clean the clutter when you do that in the kitchen or do that. It's like, wow, this feels so much good. I'm organized. So without even making any actions, just by signing up for the process, right, with me, she made some significant headway. And Michelle, I think you were part of the conversation 2 weeks ago, right? So here's the game changer. She did the planning worksheet. She basically had, and she's like, and I'm like, she was watching a movie, when she was without the kids. There was time at night. She goes, I have 3 hours. What am I talking about? Like, I'm just not making this a priority. Right? She goes, when I put pen to paper, it was so easy for me to see, hey, maybe during my kid week, I can't make as much room for strength workouts, but I can during my non-kid week, and I'm going to do it with my husband. So we walked away with a plan on what she was going to do, and from meal prep, which she decided on, and then time at the gym for an hour. And she was going to text me a picture of her in the gym Monday, yesterday, tomorrow, Wednesday, because this is the week actually that it turns out she's without her kids. And then a picture of her, what she made for her lunch, 2 days a week. So again, little steps at a time, and I was really impressed of her living her optimal journey. That's what we're phrasing our journey together. I said, let's come up with a good mantra for Sarah. as we work on this. And then, at some point we'll get to the quality of food of which she's eating. But right
Mhm.
now, it's all about where she wanted to start, and that was her capacity, time management, and actual habits to start the process.
Fantastic. That sounds like a roaring success for the first 2 weeks.
So far, so far.
Yeah, one thing that two things I actually call out there. In our initial discussion, I shared a piece of advice that I often share, which is giving adults homework is often a strategy that coaches really love to endorse, but can often backfire in that it's seen as another thing on their to-do list. This is a shining example of where I was completely wrong, and I'm glad to hear it because it sounds like this person really was able to kind of like sit down and visually see what their schedule looks like, at least in the circumstance where they're not a caregiver. And I believe in this example, they share caregiving duties with their partner. So some days or some weeks will look different than others. It kind of alternates, but they were able to create the space they needed to just visually see what this can look like, which I think is incredibly useful. So whether you handle that in the course of a conversation or have them take away that resource, in this case, which one did you use? Was it the time management worksheet from PN?
It was, yeah, of
Because we
course,
talked
yeah.
about
It
a whole
was
bunch
the
of different things.
Well, it was the PN. What is it called? It's called something. The planning worksheet. The planning worksheet. It's 2 pages. But here's the thing,
Mhm.
Jeremy, and I heard you loud and clear. I sent it to her and I said, we can do two things because I know you're really busy. You could take the time to complete this for 1 or 2 days over the next week as you see fit. Or if you don't have time, let's do it together on Monday night when we meet. And let's just kind of, as a
Mhm.
collaborative approach. And she went ahead and full guns and decided to do it herself. So I did take that advice from you to the point of, hey, if she wants to do it, great. If not, we'll do it together.
Mhm. Well, I mean, this also kind of hits on my next point here, which is something that I've noticed, at least from my own practice, and maybe other coaches here can also share their experience. But as coaches, we're often very prepared to get to the problem solving stage where we identify a client's problems, create a roadmap for them to succeed, assign actions, and then say, go, do the thing. And what you did here, Laura, at least what I'm hearing is you gave them an action to take where it's like, hey, you can do this on your own, we can do this together, but there was no additional steps that they needed to take in that week. And then when you touch base with them next, they gave you this whole laundry list of, hey, here's all the things that I accomplished this week. I was able to clean up my space. I was able to journal out my time. I was able to plan my lunch. I was able to take steps towards getting to the gym. All of these fantastic things. And I think this is common to what I also see in that the initial phase of coaching, folks often expect to leave that first meeting with a whole bunch of things that they need to do. They're sitting there, they're gritting their teeth, they're waiting for you to tell them all the things that are wrong, what their current approach, and then give them the list of things to do so that they can start to amend that list and then start to live the life that they've always dreamed of. Which is sometimes great if they have the capacity, they can do all the things, they have all the resources aligned already. But quite often, telling a client to say, or at least relieving the pressure by saying, hey, for this next period of time, for this first 7 days, 14 days, whatever it is in between, we're going to do very little. We're going to just observe. I don't actually need you to do anything in this space. Uh, but if there are some actions that come up, feel free to let me know. Can be really freeing for a client, for someone who is ready to kind of bear this huge burden of behavior change and health change and changing many aspects of their life, to let them leave that first session to be like, hey, we actually don't need to do too much here. We're going to leave it kind of an open book is a nice way to get them introduced to what your coaching style can be like, especially if you want to be that more light touch coach. Uh, I have had it where normally the spiel that I give clients at the end of that first meeting, it's like, hey, we've identified a few areas that will likely require some attention over the next few weeks and months. Here's what those actions can start to look like. But for this first period of time, I would actually like to see just some observation on your part. So think about this for a little while. Come back, let me know what it would look like if we implemented. Most of the time, when we have that conversation next, the client is going to come back with something like, hey, based on our conversation, I started doing X, Y, and Z. And then it becomes very apparent what they can continue to do. I just have to sit there and go, great, what allowed you to do those things? And they're like, oh, yeah, well, in our conversation, we talked about this. I was already previously kind of doing a little bit of that. I now recognize that I can do some more of this. And I just have to sit there and go, and they feel very empowered that all of this action came from them. And my role there was very much just to be kind of a supportive voice in their corner, but not actually be really rigid in terms of instruction or assigning of actions, which feels like a really great starting place for a lot of client interaction. I am not seen as someone who is their like school teacher or their like headmaster. I'm not going to be here kind of like poking and prodding every single moment for them to do actions. They just show up and then action somehow happens, which is a good person to be in someone's life. Uh, Laura, anything else from that popped
The,
up for
the,
you from your
the other
experience
thing,
with that client?
the other thing I just would add is she's very structured, very disciplined,
Mm,
and instead of looking at that as a maybe roadblock to her success, I used it as a strength to her success and recognized her that, hey, you don't lack discipline. You've got discipline, you've got structure. What the opportunity was is for us to build a system that fits her busy, hectic life. And
mhm.
when I positioned it that way, I was able to recognize her for that and then help her with that mindset and getting back to the end game. So it really worked in in our favor as we're kind of working and building this habit change and implementing some changes in her life that she felt really, really good about. So building on folks' strengths is something that I truly believe in and has worked for me as a coach in the past and will help the clients see see more clearly with execution of the change and of the actions that they put in place.
Excellent. Way to work with what is as opposed to trying to break everything down and start from the foundation.
That's right.
Uh, there's another thing that you mentioned there in terms of kind of this client's specific superpower. Uh, just drawing from our previous conversation a few weeks ago, one of the things that resonates with me is that you were very clear to highlight what specifically the client wanted to work on, which is not always a super common thing for every client. Uh, it is really a gift when you have someone who comes and sits down in front of you and says, hey, I know exactly what my problem is, and this is what I would like to focus on. Quite often in coaching, especially in these calls, we'll have folks who you're newer to coaching and you'll ask the question, hey, what is kind of like the recipe or formula that most coaches follow for the average client? I would say for the average client, they don't have great awareness of where they need to focus their attention. They'll probably be able to identify a few key areas and you can always build off of it. But as coaches, it's useful to have like, what is the playlist that I can draw from if a client says, I don't know, coach, you tell me what to do and we can start to work from there if they're more of a blank slate. Uh, but if you have a client who is like, hey, I know exactly what I need to work on, and this is the problem that we need to address, that is incredibly useful. So your client identifying time management is my biggest bottleneck. That's the thing that I need to address. And then being able to just kind of think of think on it by themselves for a little while with a little bit of assistance and organization that you provided. Uh, that seems to be a very useful path. And when you get those clients, it is a real pleasure to work with them because quite
Yeah.
often you get to just sit back and be like, cool, they're going to do the thing. I can offer gentle guidance, give them some structure to work within, but they'll probably be okay. Uh, and I get to just kind of like sit back and worry about maybe getting a crick in my neck from nodding so much. That's like my biggest concern. Uh, cool. Thank you for that update, Laura.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions for Laura before we move on? Uh, if not, then I will share my first discussion for today in the chat box. Hopefully the links work today. Maybe not, then I'll explain it. But we have a comment from the PN coaches community from Coach Rachel J. And they were asking about a situation that they have upcoming with the client. So if you want to take a second and read the link, by all means, but for folks who can't access it, Coach Rachel says they have a client who is non-weight bearing for the next 6 weeks. They're pretty active. So this is going to be a major adjustment in lifestyle. And they're non-weight bearing because they have a scheduled foot surgery coming up. And they would like to know, what recommendations do you have on the nutrition side with adjusting calories or intake to account for the change in overall activity? So this sounds pretty similar to a case study that would be pulled directly from your L1 resources. And I'm curious, coaches here, what additional questions would you ask for the coach? Or if you were in the coach's shoes, what considerations would you have in your role as this person's nutrition coach? Feel free to either unmute or to pop your answer into the chat box. Is the link popping up as a nothing burger? What are we getting, Michelle?
It just said, yeah, it just says I can't, like, it's not shared with you. Like, even though I have Facebook open, it's not opening, so I can't read it
Hmm.
background.
Facebook loves to change things that were working perfectly fine and not working perfectly fine anymore. So yeah, for that one, it is quick summary again. Client has foot surgery coming up. They'll be non-weight bearing for about 6 weeks. Pretty active person, so this will be a significant adjustment in their lifestyle. Interpret pretty active in any way that makes reasonable sense to you. And then what recommendations do you have on the nutrition side when adjusting calories slash nutritional intake to account for the change in overall activity? That's the question that Coach Rachel has. Oh, thank you, Malcolm. Malcolm's being able to post it in the chat box. Michelle, what would you use the nutrition calculator to change for? What variables would you adjust?
Activity variables, particularly.
Mhm. Cool.
Agree. And I would also, as I would use Michelle's advice, assess what their current energy intake is, which would obviously allow for the adjustment, and then maybe look at the quality of the food that she's eating, because that might have to shift in some way.
Yeah, so certainly I think one of the questions that I would start with is, what are you currently working on? And then how is that currently influencing nutrition intake? So if there's someone who's like, I'm just fueling for performance versus someone who is looking to potentially drop body fat, those are already going to be different intakes with different nutritional requirements. So that will influence the degree or severity to which we make adjustments.
Hi everybody. I also would always, as somebody who is pretty active, be really curious about like the mental health aspect of like I'm very active and now I have to like not move for 6 weeks. I know that if I had to be 6 weeks without moving, then I will lose my mind. And that's where
Mhm.
we tend to go into this high reward foods to get the dopamine rush. So
Mhm.
I think like what are things that we put in place? What is the support system I have around you? What are different ways that you can channel the dopamine that comes from the activity?
100%. So yeah, I mean, not specifically asked by Coach Rachel, but
Hmm.
certainly conversations that I would want to engage with my client as a way to kind of support them through this time period. Uh, yes, exactly. 6 weeks as like a very active person of being on your butt or couch ridden or just like not being able to do the things you love that help you to manage stress and regulate kind of your emotional state can be a lot. So
Hmm.
before changing calories, I think there's probably some other things that I would look into. Uh, so that's an excellent point. Any other nutritional strategies that folks would discuss with their client?
Hi
Kinda.
everyone.
I'm good. I'm good.
So,
Oh, Daniel, we'll
Oh,
go
sorry.
Kinda first, and then we'll go Daniel. Cool.
okay.
Thank you, Daniel. Hi, everyone. Just we can think about it that the only injury part of the body gonna be the foot. So it's not the knee or the thigh or the hips or the shoulders or the arms. So all the rest of our body functions are active. So we think in this way and take it for direction to protect the foot, the injury, the surgery side, and work on the all over the body from up to toes what we are able to work on. So I, as I told you, I give classes, and beginning of January this year, I slipped and I broke my wrist, and I end up putting a cast for 3 months,
Hmm.
which is was very concerned for me, not only for the classes I'm giving, also for my body, for my muscle strength, for my body and nutrition and shape. All these cases was running fears around my head, what I'm gonna do. So I end with figure out another type of exercises to do a light push-up instead of putting my hands, putting all my arms with the elbow on the mattress and do the push-up. So, for example, for example, also they can think about another options like, as you mentioned, he's lying or she's lying herself on a bed or a mattress. So to keep moving, doing a light sit up or all the legs up and down, some specific exercises, or for the body core, raising the hip and down in a gentle way, that will support. Plus, we have an injury which is mean only for week or 10 days. No any moving, but after that, we need to start the physiotherapy light, little by little, gentle, which is they need to do some exercise for the bone. So that's of course going to be after under medical supervision and what they gonna recommend for the case. This is from the physical part. From
Mhm.
the nutrition part, depend on the weight, on depend on the patient. Is his this is the first question. Is his weight stable, or he was going through weight loss journey or not? Number one. Number two, what is his background or history about his body adjusting food, especially when you sleep for 6 weeks or a long time, just mean even the digesting gonna be slow, and that's gonna affect in your stomach and your do some conflictions. So we're gonna add more fibers, we're gonna reduce the carb or the any kind of food who gonna like scratch the tomato something with the cornstarch like the potatoes, pasta, those who's gonna maybe can make some any digesting problem. More soup, more also protein, not necessary to be with
Mhm.
a real piece of meat or something solid. Can be in like introducing with a soup or with something with the chicken broth or like this kind of things. Also, if he have considered that to gain weight or sugar gonna have a problem with him, we can replace the real sugar with dry prune, dry dates, those kind of dry fruits, which is gonna give us energy. And at the same time, we're not gonna be worried about, oh, I am not moving, I'm not burning calories. If I'm gonna eat this piece of cake, what's gonna happen to me?
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Those are certainly things to consider. Daniel, what did you have to add?
Oh, thank you. So I'm aware of the time, so I'll try to make it quickly. And the thing is, I really loved what Malcolm mentioned about the mental side, also what the lady kind of yourself just mentioned, and that is definitely I would consider what this person's goals are, like how much activity it is. From my personal observation, working with people who like to move, who are very active, this is kind of tragedy. They need to. Uh, I'm not worried that they wouldn't find ways how to move despite the surgery or whatever. They would probably find ways how to move um, in different ways, so they would not be probably bedbound. But I would make sure also that they eat like this whole food and at the same time be aware of the protein intake. And I would give them that guide from PN about recovering from injury, and probably mention that just because they are not moving, it doesn't mean that their body doesn't need or needs less energy necessarily because of the reparation. So these would be like the big things.
Excellent. Nailed it there. So one thing, I just posted the resource that Daniel was mentioning, the Nutrition for Injury Recovery infographic. If you or your client is recovering from a major ailment, think something like broken bones or from surgery or something like that, uh, or any other kind of soft tissue injury, this is something that you may want to keep on hand for them. There are probably some things that are a little bit more, we'll call them our A1 strategies. One that Daniel mentioned there is maintaining uh, caloric balance. So if there is someone who is working on weight loss, this may be a period of time where it's like we actually need to go closer to calorie maintenance to help support recovery. So that is, I think, a really crucial item to discuss with your client. Mentioned by all three coaches, kind of like the psychology of movement and how we can support them through this phase. Uh, Things that I would also add to that side of the discussion would be, is there anything that we can do prior to surgery to put you in the best state to help the recovery? So can we start to prep some meals ahead of time that you freeze, knowing that being on your feet is gonna be limited, so your ability to prep some meals may be diminished? Can we look into getting a meal delivery service for that time so that you're well fed and you don't have to worry about feeding yourself as much? And that's one more stressor that is taken off your plate and something that you can put those resources into being comfortable. Uh, Also having the discussion regarding kind of like current goals will be shifted at least during that 6 week period, potentially beyond that. What does it look like for us to continue our coaching discussion? What does this shift or what does our focus shift to in terms of helping you to recover as well as kind of maintaining your sanity there? And then at what point do we know that we're in a space to get the green light again and focus on some of your other goals? So whether that's body composition, athletic, or health derived, are we waiting for sign off from your doctor? Are we waiting for sign off from your physio? Are we waiting for some other green light that you have to kind of like pass that stage before we can get back into more of our regular discussions? So just some things that might be useful to plan ahead. And in this case, the example is foot surgery, non-weight bearing for 6 months or 6 weeks, but likely in the span of your coaching career, you will work with someone who has some other setback, be it health or life related, that is going to require them to pause their current journey. Figuring out how you can continue to support that person when the thing that they were initially paying you for may not be in play for either a short or extended period of time is incredibly useful for not only continuing that relationship, but making sure that you are supporting that client in a way that feels reasonable given the shift in their current lifestyle. So you'll definitely have someone who says, hey, I want to work on running a marathon. And then 3 weeks in, maybe they're in a bicycle accident and they break their collarbone and that marathon training goes out the window. How do you still maintain that conversation with the client to ensure that one, you're supporting them, and two, you can continue to work on other goals that feel incredibly valuable to them so that you maintain that coaching relationship as well. And feel free to save that infographic for yourself or for client use. Any thoughts or questions before we move on to our next discussion? Cool. I'm going to share the post again, knowing full well that it probably will not work, but somehow Malcolm was able to get this post. So this one comes from Coach Andrew Matthias, and Andrew, who is a regular on these calls, was asking about a book that they're reading. So Coach Andrew wanted to know, in the book that they're reading, which is Intuitive Eating for Every Day by Evelyn Tribole, they are looking at one of the chapters that begins with a message to not track/measure food intake, including with hand portions. They were saying that they're going to continue to read this, but maybe the next pages take a turn. But they were curious to know, how do you work with paradigms or different coaching methodologies that are potentially not in alignment with what you learned from PN in your L1 or L2 studies. So you're a coach out in the world, you have your L1 knowledge, L2 knowledge in hand, but then you are confronted with something that runs completely perpendicular to what you learned. It just does not gel. How do you go about integrating that information in a way that makes sense to your coaching brain? Thanks, Daniel. I think that is the post that is the exact quote from Andrew, if anyone wants to read it. Daniel, go ahead. What do you got?
No, so I think the reason he's confused because it's a kind of different tool for a different job.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the major misunderstanding because hand portion is about creating awareness, let's say, and maybe controlling the input or our intake, being more aware of that. While intuitive eating essentially is not any kind of weight loss or weight change strategy in essence.
Yes.
And that is about reconnecting yourself and nurturing relationship with food.
Correct. Yes. So I think if you read through some of the comments, if you're able to find the post, I believe that is a couple folks who are more well versed in intuitive eating mention kind of what is the population that it's meant for and what does the tool specifically provide, and understanding that not every tool or every framework will apply to every client. So you don't need to make all of your approaches mesh with every single thing that you hear. If there's an approach that sounds relatively sane to you, and it sounds like that might apply or have some value for you and your clients, you can take from those systems. And we would encourage you to seek out other health and wellness or other systems that are related to the work that you do, and maybe not exactly from the exact sources. So maybe not created by a dietitian, maybe not created by a strength and conditioning coach, but they have a framework that works with their population, and you see some seeds that can also be translated to your work. We'd strongly encourage you to do so. And the things that do not mesh as well, feel free to leave those aside. You do not need to adopt a methodology, including PN, wholesale for it to be important and valuable to the work that you do. Any other comments or questions from folks here? I'm curious to know, has anyone uh, gone a little bit deeper into the intuitive eating methodology? Daniel, you sound pretty well versed in it. I think you got the high level notes there. Have you explored any of the additional work or resources?
Yeah, I think so. Even before starting with PN, I was in the like that is how I started with intuitive eating with the goal to basically, or my idea was, okay, I will listen to my body,
Mhm.
and by listening to my body, I will lose weight, some extra fat, like I was not really overweight. I will improve my performance, and I will feel great.
Mhm.
So these are like three completely kind of different goals. Not completely different, but uh, it's not done by intuitive eating. And if I can share, like based on the years of me educating myself on this topic, it's like that is what usually people think about it when
Mhm.
it comes to intuitive eating, that it is something that I should somehow understand uh, my body signals, and my body is wise. So if I have a chocolate craving, I should eat chocolate. If I have a gluten
Mhm.
craving, I should eat gluten, even though I'm gluten sensitive or whatever.
Right.
So that interpretation is not generally, I think, correct. And I think it's really great for people to go into it and use it together, maybe also with measurements. So, for example, with my clients, what I do is I can add to that previous case. So, for example, this athlete who is or person who is uh, on a leave, let's say, who
Mhm.
is not actively, let's say, exercising or whatever. That is when I would explore more like getting into tune with your body, like exploring hunger and fullness signals and so on.
Fair. And I think this conversation's come up a couple times in the PN community in terms of the way that we use the term intuitive eating and the purpose that we use it for, which seems to be closer to what you are using intuitive eating for, Daniel, which is the more that I understand what my body is asking, uh, the better I'll be able to control and manipulate my body composition, my performance, things of that nature, which is something that a lot of folks come to PN seeking. Whereas the term intuitive eating, as coined by its founders, is not necessarily in alignment with changing anything about your body. It's more about, as you said, honoring your hunger and being able to gain more comfort in the confidence that you have that your body knows what it's asking for, not necessarily to change itself, but more to find kind of peace and calm and confidence with those decisions. If you are on this call here, feel free to take a look into the chat box. The 10 principles of intuitive eating, I think, are quite illuminating. And I think PN coaches would largely find that these are things that we want to be able to share with folks. And again, as I was saying, you don't have to you don't have to internalize and coach all 10 of these elements, but if there are things there that would work for you or for your clients, I would strongly encourage you to take a deeper look into the intuitive eating process to understand it a little bit more.
Hey, Jeremy, I really like this. It kind of
Mhm.
goes into the one of the blogs that I read, the 30-day challenge around mindful eating.
From
Uh,
PN or
from PN, there was a
gotcha.
30-day
Yep.
that 30-day challenge, which I had my one of my clients actually listen to the audio, and her and I are
Mhm.
going to have some fun together because I think we all sometimes will, have opportunities around mindfulness eating and eating to we're 80% full or not. So it's just a fun way to think about these 10 principles as you're integrating some 5-minute actions to really think about what you're eating, how you're eating, and I really like it. It's very simple.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in the process. Much like many frameworks in the fitness industry, I'm like, there are some really great things there. And then there are some things that are less relevant to the work that I do. And that's okay. These things can both coexist. And then depending on what my client's needs are, I'm able to send them in specific directions, or we can continue to facilitate that work together in-house, depending on how they show up and what they need. Any final questions, comments, thoughts before Kinda?
Well, I think that intuitive eating have, like we can say, double-edged sword, because it's gonna be really helpful for us and good in a way, and in the same time depend on our uh, what we are going through, or what's our lifestyle, or what we are facing. It's gonna let our intuition gonna be in a direction to go eat more, or to be more aggressive or more stressed, which is, oh, I want more sugar because I'm under stress. I'm going through depression. So those things sometimes give us naturally feeling that reward food in the wrong time, or a bigger quantity without even we notice that. But also sometimes it's gonna work if it's you reach the point that you can understand your body, and you can sense what is the type of food is, and put all these circumstances, all these things going through around you on a side, and just sense your body, what is helping it to be balanced, and what is affecting in your functions, and give you anxiety when you eat. So there's some type of foods, if we know, study about body, we will understand that, oh, this type give me anxiety, this kind is make me more nervous, this some so learning about your body with also age. The age is it's the specific. What is the age we're talking about? If you're in 20 and you're 30 and you're 40s, you're gonna be way more aware what resonate with you. So as coaches, if we feel that this person or this client, he have a normal, stable life without no any things he's going through gonna affect, if he gonna go with his intuition for work, for food, in a wrong direction, I encourage them. But if I feel that they are going through some family problems, or stress, or any kind of issues is going on in their life, which is going to affect in their focusing, or their in their way how they're going to reward food, no. I'm going to try to go to my direction and grab the client, and do it in a different way. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly, I think, deep, valuable principles in the intuitive eating approach. That is why lots of it features in the PN methodology as well. In terms of using it to kind of safeguard clients, or a coach acting as the safeguard for their client in terms of their eating patterns, there's likely some amount of conversation that is useful. And then there's a place where it's like, if I am getting overly prescriptive, that is a place where coaches can sometimes get into a spot of trouble, we'll say. So listening to kind of the response that you shared there, definitely some things where I strong agree. But much like intuitive eating, there are some areas where I'm like, I don't know if it's up to us as coaches to decide what is right or wrong for a client. It is more so, are they identifying this as a place where they need more support? Or is this something that I'm saying will not, or am I the one who is adding kind of the value judgment here? So that is something that I would encourage
Depends
all
how much
coaches
we
to kind of,
trust the client.
I would hope you trust your clients
No,
implicitly
trust
because
that he know
they're,
the right choices. That's what I mean, for
gotcha,
himself.
okay,
Yeah, trust
right,
the client that he know the right choices for himself. The depend what
gotcha.
he's going through. Yeah.
Cool. Well, then I appreciate that clarification. Uh, Actually, before I move on to the next conversation, Laura, you had mentioned that you had an additional question uh, for pricing. Are you still there? Cool. Do you want to share your question and then we can go from there?
My question was recommendations on what fellow coaches are charging clients in general. I see the guidance on PN Nutrition, just depending on how long you've been in practice, $50 an hour or $65 an hour.
Mhm.
My intuition, just in terms of when having a client sign up with you, is that because of just the holistic approach that we take and the organization takes, my thought is minimum of 90 days or even six
Gotcha.
months for lasting
Mhm.
habit change. So what are others doing? What's been successful for others?
Gotcha. Uh, so I know this is a question that people like to dance around this one a lot. So I know Coach Kate will, for example, say you can charge anything between $0 and $5,000. If someone is willing to pay it, they're willing to pay it. Uh, my suggestion for coaches looking to kind of nail their initial pricing figure would be to look online to see if you can find someone who already offers a service that is the same or very similar to yours. So if you are in a city or a town where there is someone who is offering nutrition coaching or a gym that offers it as part of their offering, understanding like what do my local competitors offer is more relevant than understanding what does every coach in the world offer, because you're just going to get a wider spread. So to narrow down your spread, I would look more regionally first, because again, it also factors in that the people that you are most likely to coach initially will be people who already know and like you. So they'll probably be people who are within your geographic region as well. Starting there, if you live in a place where it's like no one has ever heard of nutrition coaching and it's not a service that's offered, then we start to go to what are some parallel services. So things that people often consider when thinking about purchasing nutrition coaching, uh, probably before purchasing nutrition coaching, for being honest. So things like dietetic services, personal training, those things would probably be useful anchoring points for us to understand, okay, given uh, working with a dietitian costs this amount of money, and they have this level of education, and this is what they're offering in their services. How do I pair or how do I price accordingly to be competitive with that? So that is something to consider there. Another tool that you can use that seems to be quite useful for getting an answer quite quickly is go on to a ChatGPT type app and ask, hey, here's what I'm offering, here's the pricing plan. Given that, what do coaches in my geographic area cost? And then you can get a narrowed down answer. I think the last time I did it for Toronto, it was something like 150 to like $300 per month. And I was like, cool, I'm smack in the middle, so that's fine with me. So hopefully that gives you an answer that allows you to move forward.
That was,
The other thing that yeah,
yeah, thank you. No, that was perfect. I did do a little bit of that, but need to do more and was curious from anybody on the phone, their experience, or if they've even set any ranges with your clients.
mhm. In terms of timing range, which I think is maybe a conversation that is attached to hourly income, but you might want to separate the two in terms of thinking of it from best outcomes for your clients.
Mhm.
So, do I go for 1 month, 3 months, 6 months? If you believe that your coaching experience uh, is best in offering to your clients for like a longer period of time, I would make sure to factor that in, but then also have an opportunity for them to uh, think of your refund if they're like, hey, after a month this is not working out, what does that look like? So do they pay kind of just like a prorated rate? Is there a full refund? What does that look like? Is a discussion worth considering as well. Uh, I can also tell you that, I mean, average client that I work with tends to be about 6 to 8 months. And if we get past that, then we're quite likely to cover more than a year. But that is just pulling from my own experience.
Thank you.
No worries. Any questions or comments on pricing for Laura?
I agree with you, Jeremy. It really helps to, we can say a lot of things about AI, but I do a lot of marketing analysis with all the competitors in my local area. So what I do is, with a prompt, help me understand all the nutrition coaches in Sonoma County, put 10 to 20 people, and put their pricing point. And that
Mhm.
way, ChatGPT, what it does is search them, and in a list, it already puts that. And then as an added bonus, it tells me like, what's the average charge, specifically regarding your question. It says like based on the analysis is 50 to 150 per hour. People, some coaches can do it in a pricing point, like do the 6 week structured program or per month subscription base. And
Yep.
that's like the
I
thing that I pull right now, but while doing my own marketing analysis here in California.
Cool. Yeah, I'm glad to see that you have those data points to base your decision off of. At the end of the day, for most folks, it's going to come down to what am I comfortable charging to do the work
Mm.
that I'm doing. So also having one of the like early initial kind of anchor points that I had for myself was what would it in my dream fantasy world, how many clients would it take for me to pay my rent entirely through coaching? And it turns out it was like, I think 12 clients at a certain rate. And I was like, oh, that's actually not that crazy. And then within a few months, I'd gotten to 12 and I was like, I'm living the dream. I can't imagine anything better than this. So you can also anchor to kind of just an external goal that you set for yourself and then reverse engineer back from there as well. So how much time do I have and what is my goal? If I have time to work with 10 people per week, uh, and my goal is X, how do I then move those variables around? So it's like, oh, I need to charge something like $60 per week in order to make that. That gives me 600. So that will get my goal of 3,600. 6 times 4, up 2,400. So lots of ways to go around or go about setting that number. There are definitely external data points that you can use as your reference. You can go more internally guided and work from there. It's really going to be up to you. Any final comments or questions before we sign off for today?
I was going to say that I did the same thing as Malcolm. I went on ChatGPT and I asked for the local area. I put in all my services, what I was offering, and it did give
Mhm.
me an amount of pricing. But my program I was doing for just 8 weeks, 2 months. And
Mhm.
it did give me, and it gave me, who else was in the area that was somewhat like mine, but it did give me some other points that made mine more unique. Yes. So,
Gotcha.
mm-hmm.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm glad to see that that was a method that's worked for a couple folks. Hopefully, that'll
Mm-hmm.
be something that helps with Laura as well when she catches the recording, I think. Cool. We can sign off here for today. Thank you, folks, for your participation and thank you for your questions. And then I think we have maybe one or two more before we're wrapping it up and taking a little bit of a break for the end of the year. So, hope to see you at the future ones. Cheers, gang.